People ask me all the time, what do I want my legacy to be? I don't care. If 3 generations from now, they don't remember Fawn Weaver lived, I don't care. And that's the interesting thing, because I'm so passionate about cementing the legacy of Nearest Green, but I don't actually care about people remembering me. Maybe that's why I'm the steward of this story, that I was chosen to be this generation's baton holder of this story and building this brand to pass it to the next generation, is because I don't think about myself in the process at all. As a kid, I don't know that I would say I was entrepreneurial. I would say that people would have called me rebellious, as they did. And I think most entrepreneurs would have been called rebellious as their kids. So maybe it means the same thing in childhood. If someone called our house, we would have to pick up the phone and say, "It's a great day at the Wilson house. How may I help you?" Well, what do you do if it's not a great day? And so I was that child that was like, I'm not going to say it's a great day. I'm not having a great day. And so there was just a nonstop battle with myself and my parents. And at the age of 15, they had a new baby girl, and they wanted to have an opportunity to raise her without there being a negative influence in the house. So they sat me down, and it was a, sort of shape up or ship out type of conversation. It was very much so, listen, we want to have the opportunity to raise her without you negatively impacting her. And so you have 2 choices. Either you do what we are now telling you to do as your parents in this household, or you have to leave. I think I was there another hour. My mom says she remembers me leaving out with a backpack and a lunch pail. When I left home at 15, I dropped out of high school not too long after. And so I found myself at a place called My Friend's Place, and it's for young people. And then the only place that had a bed for me was Children of the Night. When I turned 18, I could no longer be at Children of the Night. So they moved me to Covenant House. And so at Covenant House, every day you go out with your resume, you go out and you look for a job. It's a requirement. You either have to go to school or you have to go out and look for a job. I went out the very first day, and I came back, and we have these campfire things that you would do, and everyone around the campfire was lamenting about how hard it is to find a job, and they went out and they put out this and that and this and that. And I sat there silent because I went out and came back with 4 jobs. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm different. Beginning my first business at 18, I started with 2 clients, both paying me, I think, $5,000 a month. I thought I was really rich. But then you learn that your top line and your bottom line don't mirror one another if you hire a whole bunch of people. And I think I had, like, between part-time and full-time, like 10 people working with me, and I only had 2 accounts. And so it was very quickly before that ended up getting pared down to just me, right? Which is what most PR firms are when they're beginning. So now I'm finding myself on couches again. And at the age of 20, decided to try to take my life. They had to pump charcoal through my nostrils, and I will never forget the feeling of it going through cartilage in order to pull out all of the pills that I took and the alcohol. I remember sitting there and listening to the doctors talk around me, and I remember laying there and going, I have got to be here for a reason, because I've now tried to take myself out twice and have been unsuccessful both times. And so literally laying there in that hospital bed, I committed myself to figuring out, why am I here on earth? Back in June of 2016, on the cover of the New York Times International Edition, I saw this photo of this black man sitting to the right of Jack Daniel. I wasn't a Jack Daniel drinker. I had no idea who this black man was, but Jack Daniel is one of the most ubiquitous brands around the world. And so I knew what Jack looked like. And the headline said, Jack Daniel's embraces a secret ingredient, help from a slave. But then when I began to dive into the story, something else began to be peeled back. That photo, taken around 1904, that photo was cropped. I got the original photo. That black man isn't just to the right of Jack Daniel. That black man was centered. So even though we don't have a photo of Nearest Green, the person who he ceded the center position to is Nearest's son, George Green. Nearest Green was not only the teacher and mentor of a young Jack Daniel, he was the first master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery. And Jack Daniel Distillery's original distillery number was distillery number 7. Nearest Green is the only known master distiller to ever operate at distillery number 7. I thought, if we can prove this, this changes everything. Because for African Americans for so long, the way that we have seen ourselves, or the way that we've been portrayed, is that these enslaved people came in and they were uneducated. That is not true. They were educated in their own country, in their own language. And so for my 40th birthday, I decided I wanted to go to Lynchburg, Tennessee. I want to see if what I think is true, which at the time is completely opposite of everything that was in social media, everything that was in the press at that time, was Jack is a slave owner, he stole the recipe, he hid the slave, they've tried to hide this for the last 150, 160 years, and I had a completely different theory. This is a story of love, honor, and respect, and it's an ally who wanted to make sure America could not wipe his friend away, his mentor away, this insignificant person away. One of the first people that we meet in the library, when I'm sitting there across from my husband doing research, is the second eldest living descendant of Jack Daniel, who offers to help, who literally pulls out her cell phone and gives me the name and number of Nearest Green's descendant who had been doing genealogy research for 30 years. And then she said, hey, you know that book that you read called Jack Daniel's Legacy? It's his biography written in 1967, height of the civil rights era. And you had this white reporter from Alabama comes up, interviews all of the people who knew Jack best. And they include Nearest and his boys more time than Jack's own family. In 1967, if you didn't want to credit a black man, you just left him out of the book. You left him out of the story. I shared this with Jack's descendant, and she's like, yes, we all grew up together. The story that's out there is not the true story. And so in that book, a lot of it takes place on this farm, this 313-acre farm right in the hills above Lynchburg, Tennessee. And she says to me, hey, you know that farm? It's for sale. At that time, I thought this could be a book, this could be a movie. Within a week, we had made an offer, it had been accepted on that property. And now all of a sudden we're going, well, what are we gonna do with this? The realtor who took us is a descendant of Jack Daniel, who took us to see the house. Turns out she had been in the family business her whole life. She had retired after 31 years as the head of whiskey operations for Jack Daniel. And she says, hey, I know you're gonna do a book and you're gonna do a movie, but if you ever decide to put his name on a bottle, I'll come out of retirement to make sure you get it right. The serendipity of everything that was happening, the only thing I could do was literally look to the heavens and go, all right, Jack and Nearest, what are y'all doing up there?
What helped me to find my purpose, or allowed me to live so that I could live in my purpose, is the same reason we are talking about Nearest Green's legacy today. Because the only difference between Kentucky bourbon and Tennessee whiskey is what Nearest Green taught: charcoal filtration. Truly, it was the same charcoal being utilized to purify my body after a second attempt at my life.
When we began this, we knew that there had never been an African American, a Black American, to succeed in founding and leading a spirit company in the history of American spirits. Now, mind you, American spirits have been in our country for over 400 years, and never once was there a Black American that had ever succeeded. We have a lot more money these days, and so our buying power is strong. And as our buying power has gone up, we've become the face of all these brands, but we didn't own it. And so the question was, why? And I didn't have that answer, but what I knew is this industry wasn't set up for me to succeed. So every time someone would give me advice, I would completely disregard it and do the opposite. So everyone told me, you should start in one state, build over the next 4 years or so in that one state, and then try to pick up the states that are adjoining it. I went to my chief business officer and I said, I want to be in all 50 states by the end of the first 2 years. Why? Because there's a reason that strategy has failed us. Even investors that I have brought in were like, Fawn, why would you invest so much in a distillery when none of these other bourbon brands are spending that kind of money? Put all that money into marketing. And I looked at it and said, the home place for Uncle Nearest Green Distillery is going to become the best marketing tool that we had. So I announced we're going to spend $50 million on building out a distillery. We weren't even 2 years old. People are like, this woman is crazy. Like, legitimately, this woman is crazy. She has no idea what she's doing. She's going to fail. And quite frankly, if you look at the moves I was making, I should have failed. But they were the right moves. And so we were able to transition very quickly every single time an obstacle had come our way because we owned the land, which meant we truly owned the brand. And so many of the bourbon companies that have come before us that sold, they didn't sell because those founders wanted to. They sold because they had to, because they ran out of enough money to be able to lay down enough bourbon. And for us, we began investing in assets so early, bourbon goes up. So if I put it in at $750 in the barrel and I can sell it a few years later at $1,600, guess what? I can find investors to invest in that. I can find banks to invest in that because that's real property. This land is real property. These buildings that we have built, real property. Having a Black-owned company pass to the next generation, we've not done that. Every generation of Black Americans have started from scratch. Every single one. And now we have the opportunity to set the next generation up to not have to start from scratch. Diageo, Bacardi, Brown-Forman, LVMH, every single spirit conglomerate in this country, 90%, if not more, of the volume of alcohol sales, all come from these spirit conglomerates, all founded by white men, all still chaired by white men, led by. And so having the opportunity to build a spirit conglomerate, the very first ever to be built by a person who was not a white male, that can't happen with just Uncle Nearest. That has to be whiskey, there has to be cognac, there has to be tequila, there has to be vodka. And so Uncle Nearest is one pillar in this house that will pass to the next generation. This industry has an over 99% failure rate for new brands that launch. I'm one of the 1% to succeed. It would have been so easy to sell it for $1 billion and just go, I'm just gonna rest. But to know that my purpose is so much greater and that no matter how hard it was, there wasn't a price that they could buy this company for, and that I've stood my ground even when people were like, she has to have a number. She has to have a number. They've thrown every number at me and gotten the same response. No. That's what I'm most proud of.
11 Madison Park has always had an incredible beverage program. We've been a 3 Michelin star restaurant that is focused on the entirety of the experience, and the cocktails were always something that were super important to us. We're working with the kitchen, we're working with the farms, we're working with anything that we can take from the kitchen and reuse to work more sustainably. We take our jobs very seriously, but not ourselves too seriously, and that's kind of the beautiful balance that we have here at EMP. My name is Sebastian Tolias, the beverage director here at 11 Madison Park and beverage director at Clemente Bar. We have an incredible spirits list, and people come and enjoy wine, the cocktails, but if you really dig deep into the spirits list, you'll find many gems. It's an incredible platform to showcase producers and spirits from all around the world that we really believe in. I think our purchasing power is also our voice in the same way that we're supporting producers and products that we truly believe in by being able to showcase them on our list. My journey at 11 Madison Park has been incredibly rewarding because it's been educational the whole way throughout. Working with the chefs in the kitchen, working with the ingredients that we have access to has really allowed us to take more of a culinary approach in our cocktails, where we can ferment something, or we're really talking about building complexity with flavors. That could be from making our own misos or clarifying our amazakis. And these are things that we've really incorporated into our beverage program throughout the years, and something that we're going to be featuring heavily at Clemente Bar as well. We want to create cocktails that we're excited about, that our industry is excited about, the city gets excited about. I think Clemente Bar will really allow us that opportunity to push that agenda much more as well. Creating something that's within 11 Madison Park, we wanted to create an extension of EMP. Yes, more accessible, a little more casual, but at the same time, we want to focus on craft cocktails. We're really focusing on the overall cocktail experience, from bar bites to cocktails, and being within this beautiful space that's painted by Francesco Clemente it's going to be a truly special gem within New York City. Art's always been super important here at 11 Madison Park. We've worked with incredible artists all throughout our own space down here. Francesco Clemente's art is whimsical and playful, and that's the vibe that we're going upstairs for the bar. For the cocktail program, we wanted to draw inspiration from many different avenues. Looking at classics is always an amazing way to start, but we've come so far from just riffs on classic at this point, and we wanted to create original cocktails that really are inspired by flavors and nostalgia, but also create cocktails that are slightly simple in their appearance. And I think that's where we really differentiate the cocktail menu upstairs, is that they read simple, but the process that goes on behind them to create these complex cocktails is really all the work that we do behind the scenes to create these beautiful drinks. We started working on this menu almost 8 months ago. Richie Millwater, my bar manager, and we've been working on this for quite a long time, and it's been really exciting to dive deep into R&D with him. We've created this great relationship of being able to work together and understanding ourselves, that we're able to bounce back ideas from each other, and I think that's where we really found the magic of creating this list. The R&D process for us was extremely exciting, since we were trying new techniques, creating cocktails or a cocktail menu that's well balanced in all styles of drinks, all spirit types, including non-alcoholic cocktails too. So the process for us has been really, really fun. Super excited to showcase this opening menu, and we're starting around 15 cocktails, and we're looking to expand that selection as we're growing as well. We've actually classified the list between different sections: carbonated, clarified, bold, fresh, low ABV. So we're really trying to think outside of the box. When we're explaining the cocktails at Clemente Bar, they're only listed as 4 ingredients, and I think that's the exciting part, where you read 4 ingredients, but when you actually taste the cocktail, you have so much more going on than just that. We really think about what we want to achieve before we even start picking up any bottles. I think having a plan of what direction we're going with the cocktail is more important than just start to pour ingredients into a tin or a mixing glass. The relationships that we build with farmers or purveyors or suppliers, that all really affects the way that we look at the menu and how we approach the cocktail list too. For a lot of the menu, we were inspired by a lot of nostalgic things, and this was definitely one of those cocktails that came to mind. This cocktail is called Apples to Oranges. We wanted to make a cocktail that's a little bit reminiscent of a orange creamsicle. We're playing with those spice characteristics from the tequila, but also using that coconut washed Calvados that adds that apple and that orchard flavor to all of those other citrus flavors that play well with the cocktail as well. It's a light and refreshing agave crusher for sure. For me, a cocktail is about having a good time, and it's like you can have the best drinks, the best bar food. But if we're not engaging with the guests, if we're not making genuine connections, I think that's for me a loss. And we want our guests to have a great time. And that all comes through the staff that we hire, the way that we approach the table, the way that we create these connections with them as well. It's all about hospitality in the end of the day, ensuring that we're really creating this memorable experience for the guest and creating this space that people want to come back to. This has been a project that we've been very excited about for over a year at this point. So to be at the finish line right now is really exciting.
I think when you look at a brand, you want it to inspire you. Like good art, you should feel. Our namesake is after Michelangelo's masterpiece, David. When you look at all the meaning that is in the sculpture of David and when it takes really the idea of like sculpting something perfect, there's sort of like two values that come from that, which is around intelligence and discipline. We find those values are the same values we have when it came to designing the product. If you've ever been there in person, it's like this magnificent, it has this aura and it's awe-inspiring. And so when you see a brand, you want it to stand for something. And I think there's no better symbol of that than David and what it takes to sculpt something.
Peter Rahal, the 38-year-old co-founder of nutrition bar brand RXBAR, thinks about protein constantly, and not just for his own health. Rahal has been dreaming of creating a new bar since the day he and his co-founder Jared Smith sold RXBAR to Kellogg's for $600 million in 2017. Rahal made that dream a reality in September when he launched David, or as he calls it, the final protein bar. David claims to be the most protein-dense bar in existence and is backed by high-profile physicians Peter Attia, who is also a minority investor, and Andrew Huberman.
So David is made of 28 grams of protein, 150 calories, and 0 grams of sugar. 75% of its calories coming from protein, which is the market leader. And the benefit is getting the most protein with as little of other things as possible. So it benefits a wide range of people looking for a meal replacement, people looking for a snack on the go. If you want a really efficient snack that is really value dense, the most protein possible, you can't get a better product.
Rahal took the opportunity to create a new product in October 2022, once his 5-year non-compete agreement with Kellogg's expired. He spent a year developing David with his co-founder, Zach Rainin.
Prior to David, I was running a low-carb cookie business called Raise. I met Peter through an investor who connected us. Peter thinks a lot about high-level company direction and strategy, and I think a lot about how to achieve that strategy in the most effective and efficient way. It's really fun to work with someone who is not afraid to challenge what you typically see out in the market or the way that people typically do things. If you aren't going to do things that others are uncomfortable with, you're probably not going to build anything great.
With $300 million from his share of the RXBAR sale, Rahal led David's $10 million seed round with an investment of $6 million. Rahal's second act now resembles the early years of RXBAR. With David in motion, he moved to New York in 2023 to build the business.
We're building this company with the same values, so we're really laser focused on the customer, the product, and if it turns out if you do those things right, everything works out. When you're a first-time entrepreneur, you cannot fail, right? And so you just overdo it. You have a tendency to overdo everything. If you get the product right and get product market fit right, your margin for error is just much larger.
The protein bar industry is growing, but it's becoming murkier to define as more companies start injecting protein into pre-existing products. The world's biggest candy conglomerate, Mars, started putting protein into Snickers bars in 2023. And in 2021, General Mills created protein bars from their popular cereal brands, Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Golden Grahams. Although Kind Bars never touted itself as a protein-based snack, the company caught on to the wave, releasing its first protein-forward line of bars in 2018.
From the very beginning, Peter and I got together and said, hey, what is missing from the protein bar space? And what we saw was a highly saturated market, but not really a competitive one. And by that, we meant there are a lot of products out there, but not a lot of products that really deliver on the goal of what a protein bar should be.
That was one of the biggest challenges, is like, how do you jam as much protein in something, making it machinable, and then making it delicious? And it's super hard to do, actually.
The current iteration of David includes milk protein isolate, collagen, and whey protein, and is held together with substances like allulose and polydextrose. It's a far cry from RXBAR, which used easy-to-pronounce ingredients, like eggs, and whose slogan was "No BS."
When we look at like the core tenets of a healthy diet, we see really 3 that ring true. No matter what sort of diet tribe you may belong to, the science behind eating sufficient amounts of protein, not consuming too many calories, and minimizing blood sugar spikes kind of reign true. David was designed from the very beginning to be the best bar possible on these 3 metrics.
In this business, you can't do it alone, and so you have to have really good suppliers, good partners, all down the value chain. So for us to scale, you have to lay a really good foundation of people you work with. And so for the next 3-6 months, that's our priority, is laying down the supply chain and foundation to scale great business and great product. As we prove out the product and get bigger, we hope to expand those conversations.
Based on revenues earned since launching David in September, Rahal expects to make $33 million for the company's first year, nearly $31 million more than RXBAR made in its first year.
The American obsession with fast food dates back to the 1940s and 50s, and more recently we've seen the rise of an affordable yet elevated class of fast food. Riding the momentum of this wave is Peter Cancro, the owner of Jersey Mike's, who has run the subchain for nearly 50 years.
Oftentimes people say, what would you do differently, in your life if what you knew now you knew then? And I say, nothing. I'm not going to do anything different.
Cancro has grown Jersey Mike's into one of the nation's fastest growing fast food brands, on track to hit nearly $4 billion in system-wide revenue this year from 3,000 locations. And the Jersey-born native himself is worth an estimated $5.6 billion as the business's sole owner.
When I travel out around the country to see the stores, I don't have the tie on, but I have an Oxford blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up always, and jump behind the counter, sprinkle, wrap, slice, make the hot subs, banter with the customers and the employees. They're not allowed to introduce who I am, and of course I'm still the fastest slicer.
Jersey Mike's sells itself as being the only chain with slice-to-order fresh grilled sandwiches. It actually started out as a small sub shop in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, originally called Mike's Subs, where Cancro worked making sandwiches from the time he was 14 years old.
The Jersey Shore growing up here in Point Pleasant, what a place to grow up. Small town, everybody kind of knew your name. Summertime, of course, gets extremely busy, but that's how all the business happened. That's how a small little Jersey Mike's sub shop thrived from the summertime business. The business went up for sale when I was a senior in high school, and not for a second did I ever think about buying the business. And then one night, my mother said, Peter, I heard it was for sale. She looked at me and said, well, why don't you buy it? And I sort of laughed and went upstairs, and that's when the light bulb went off. And the next morning, got up, went out to try and raise the capital. Called up my youth football coach, Rod Smith, who was a banker, and he said, I think that we can do something, and he did. So we purchased a store for $125,000, which today's dollars is about $750,000. And he always said, why did you lend so much money to such a young kid? And no lie, he said, I knew Peter could get the ball across the goal line. It was something that I really wanted to do, and gave up the college career of studying law, political science at North Carolina, Chapel Hill. At that age, you don't think that you can fail.
Soon, the loan was paid back, and Mike's Subs was selling around $1 million worth of sandwiches a year, the equivalent of nearly $7 million a year today.
So after taking over, it was 1975, and we just ran that one business for so many years. It was one of the largest volume shops in the nation, in the world, if you will. We were doing about $130,000 in gross sales per week in today's dollars. So we went from Mike's Subs to Jersey Mike's in 1987. Mike's was a little bit too generic, we thought, and Jersey is really where the product is from. Are you an authentic Jersey sub? It's kind of the state sandwich, if you will. So we started franchising in 1987 and really grew, and everybody wanted to come in. We didn't really try and market it to sell, it just people found out that we were growing. And we grew pretty well around Ocean and Monmouth County.
Most major fast food chains operate on a franchise model, which allows them to expand quickly and cheaply. To own a Jersey Mike's, local operators pay an initial fee of $18,500, put up around $500,000 to open a new store, and then pay an ongoing royalty of 6.5% of sales to license the brand.
And then in 1991, we were so committed to just spending everything that came in on marketing, on growth, on helping owners succeed, that all of a sudden the banking market fell out in the Northeast. One of the worst recessions for our company, for me, still today. And we had a layoff of my 6 employees that I had, including my brother John and everyone else on the staff. And I stood in the office alone and said, well, here I go. But everybody came back, of course. It was a tough time, well remembered, but something that looking back, I don't know how I could have prevented it. But today, that's an important part of your business plan, is that structure of financing and how you're going to grow.
Cancro redoubled his efforts, and by 1994, he had dug Jersey Mike's out of the hole and hired everyone back. By the end of the decade, Jersey Mike's had surpassed 100 locations.
It's funny, as we grew out of the state of New Jersey, no one knew who we were north of LA or in Seattle or in Ohio. But when we opened up, and we opened 1 store or 2 stores, we would always win the Reader's Choice Award from local people saying that we had the best sub.
Their sales per store are astronomically higher than all of the other sandwich sector peers.
Over the past 5 years, Jersey Mike's has averaged annual sales growth of 20.2% according to food service consulting firm Technomic, with revenue jumping from $1.3 billion in 2019 to $3.3 billion in 2023. They've nearly doubled their number of stores since 2019 and are now opening around 300 stores a year, everywhere from Alaska to Hawaii.
That kind of growth is unbelievable in the saturated United States sandwich market. It's unbelievable.
And yet, as they grow, they open locations strategically.
They have not overexpanded. Even now, at this point, they only have about 3,342 units in the United States. They have not overexpanded as had their other very large peer, Subway, which has been struggling for a number of different reasons. Subway has lost over 7,000 stores in the United States over the last 5 or 6 years.
It's not just the money-making that keeps franchisors happy, it's Cancro's leadership.
Peter Cancro has the reputation with his franchisees as being a straight shooter, a guy who in his early days actually showed up to work with franchisees and to sell franchisees in a battered station wagon.
During the pandemic, Jersey Mike's paid to have all their company and franchise restaurants remodeled.
That is unheard of in the restaurant franchise business, but they did it at a time when they knew that the restaurant economy was bad, well, the entire economy was bad, and that their franchisees needed it.
Potential Jersey Mike's franchisees are put through a vigorous screening process. The company claims only about 1% of people who apply to own a Jersey Mike's are approved, making it more competitive than getting into Harvard. Another reason is the startup costs.
Opening restaurants are not cheap. The funds just weren't available. When you're $120,000 in student loans, what bank is going to want to borrow money to a bunch of 20-something-year-olds in the midst of a pandemic? Me applying for the Rod Smith Award was kind of my last-ditch effort to Jersey Mike's.
A great way to snag a Jersey Mike's franchise is to work at Jersey Mike's. So far, Cancro has awarded about 75 franchises to former employees and managers. He even co-signs these stores' leases and lends the lucky new franchisees money to cover startup costs.
I always love kind of asking them who wants to get their own store because of our program, the Rod Smith sponsorship program. We're trying to get as many that never would have dreamed about having their own business into their own business. And that is really one of the things that, I take great pride and admiration for these young people and what they're doing. One of the key things too with the young people getting involved is that the landlords today won't take them, they don't have enough capital. So our company guarantees the lease for them, loans the money, and of course they pay it back over a 7 or a 10-year payout. But it establishes them as their own business, their entrepreneur. And it's really just so great to see and to watch.
It's not just employees the company looks to help. Cancro looks for franchisees who are willing to get their hands dirty and buy wholeheartedly into the company's culture, which includes a focus on community and charitable giving.
When I was in high school, I watched Bob Hoffman of Hoffman's Ice Cream and Jack Baker of the Lobster Shanty give to the community, to the first aid. So when seeing that in high school, so when I took over senior year at 17, I said, this is what we're gonna do. So that's where it comes from, that giving. We're always giving to wherever our heart is drawn. That's where we go. And it's not planned. I come across different charities and we decide, you know what, let's do it. And I love that part of the business, and the owners are always all in with that as well.
You don't buy a Jersey Mike's, you're awarded the Jersey Mike's. And when you put this logo on, there's a lot of weight to this. When you put this logo on, you represent a brand that has spent since 1956 giving back, putting their money where their mouth is. And then in addition to that, making a great product with it. I don't know if there's any other business out there that does the giving back just at the scale that we do as a company.
And our giving day in March of every year, all owners put up all of their sales for the day. And last year we raised over 25 million in one day. So that's a big part of our origin.
Cancro is engaged in an aggressive marketing push, spending nearly $600 million over the past 3 years on marketing such as TV spots featuring fellow Jersey Shore native Danny DeVito, who debuted as Jersey Mike's first celebrity spokesperson in 2022.
We have never done that in the history of our company. Just felt that let's just keep talking about our product, talking about our people, talk about our restaurants. But I considered it. They brought in Danny DeVito, and we met, and I knew right away that it was the right move. He grew up in Asbury Park, New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, very close to Point Pleasant, and we just sort of hit it off right from the beginning. But if you watch Danny on the commercials, he comes across very real, genuine, and heartfelt. It was incredible how it really helped our momentum as a company. People sort of laughed along with us and just sort of smiled, and it really, really was effective, for our brand to grow.
Cancro is seizing that momentum, with plans to open another 5,000 stores in the next 5 years and 300 in Canada in the next decade.
I think at 17, I didn't think it could grow to this point, but always aggressive and going after it, and what I was taught from my coaches as a youth, playing football, basketball, baseball, that helped rear me up and kind of tell myself that there's nothing you can't do. I remember being in California, one of the first stores we opened, and a lady walked in and she actually looked at me and goes, "What are you, from Jersey?" And I looked right at her. I go, "Yeah, you got a problem with that?" And she goes, "Oh, no." But it was just so automatic. And she said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry." But we both laughed, and it was just so great. But that's sort of how it is, that the Jersey, you walk around with a little bit of pride. So, and sort of like, we're gonna take it and we're gonna grow it and be nonstop.
Cancro denies rumors that he's selling soon, but after being so involved in this business for so many years, one can only speculate how much longer he'll want to hold on.
People ask, did you ever have any second thoughts? And I go, no, it's really just went with it and, had a lot of fun for the past 49 years.
I've heard it said that it's kind of a cafe culture. In a lot of ways, it's very European, the city, and people spend their time at a much slower pace in New Orleans. And I think that lends itself to the things that we're known for. So food, slow-paced meals, to cocktails that are reminiscent of things in Spain, in the Caribbean, and also places in Europe. And obviously music, which is a fundamental kind of glue that holds our entire culture together. We, as a city, are a melting pot in a lot of ways, not just the people, but also like the things that are in the foods, in the music, and in the drinks.
Really opening the menu here at Miss River in the Chandelier Bar was really about like celebrating our love for Louisiana and the cuisine here. We wanted to create the Chandelier Bar to feel like it was going to be here for 100 years and be part of the New Orleans landscape.
When I came here 4 years ago, the building was just a structure, right? Everything had been taken out, and had a lot of chance to really concept and creatively think, what statements did we want to make as we opened the first 4 seasons in New Orleans? Coming from a food and beverage background, the thinking was that the lobby needed to be a social space. It needed to be a space of interaction with the community of New Orleans, with the global guests of 4 seasons. And so instead of having those lobbies that I think typically are quiet and subtle and where people are afraid to talk, this was a lobby we wanted actually the exact opposite. We wanted people to walk in and say, wow. I think it's the new age of hotels. Hotels are no longer these stuffy, uptight places. We want them to be authentic. We want them to tell stories about the location where the hotels are in, and to be able to have both guests interact and exchange with each other, both our hotel guests and then of course the local community.
Chandelier started very simply. It was intended originally to be a champagne bar, and we thought almost immediately that we had this opportunity to showcase New Orleans cocktails as well as is possible. So we forged on a new path, and we decided, let's take the things that people know about New Orleans cocktails. The obvious stuff, Sazerac, French 75, Pim's Cup, and then even deeper cut classics that are a little lesser known. And how do we build that in a way where it's the best possible ingredients you can get? If we take ownership of, this legacy of the city and a responsibility to kind of carry it forward. We're building on generations and generations before us, and being as respectful as possible to all of those who did what they did so that any of this is possible.
We want to complement what happens here in the city, and we look up to places like Café du Monde and Brennan's and Galatoire's. Those are places that my wife and I and our friends go to and have a great time at. All we want to do is just be a good neighbor and be able to give our take on a dish that we've fallen in love with because of places like that exist.
There's great local talent in the communities that we've built our hotels in, and so much of what we have built in New Orleans is based on what that local knowledge is. Who are those people? You look at Hadi Katiri, our beverage director, someone that has made his entire career through the different bars and hotels of New Orleans, and how do you find those experts that can really make sure that you're paying tribute to the community in an authentic way and not in a vision that we have being the outsiders.
The first thing we had to consider is how do we be as respectful as possible to the cocktail heritage of the city. It's not a stretch to say that more cocktails were invented in New Orleans than maybe anywhere else on the planet, which is pretty incredible that we get to live here. And while at the same time, also be cognizant that we're in the 4 seasons and we're taking care of a luxury clientele that expects a certain international style of cocktails. So how do we make that as a hybrid?
I feel like when people come to stay here at the hotel, they should be able to check off all the great food off of their bucket list without even having to leave the building. So we wanted to create a menu where you could come and get great boudin and cracklins and red beans and gumbo. We just wanted to kind of present a option and a version of that food that we felt kind of spoke to our style of taking something really simple and elevating it in a way that tasted really, really delicious and gave you that real Louisiana feel.
Four Seasons has done a lot of research, especially in the last 5 years, of who are our guests or who is that luxury guest. And it's changed. It's changed both in age demographics. People are having wealth earlier and younger in their lifetime. Our guests don't want the buttoned up scripted service anymore. They want to know who their server is, who their bartender is. Obviously they want things that are of a higher quality, higher caliber of product selection, of finishes, of design touches. But at the end of the day, they want to know who the person is that's curating that cocktail for them.
What excites me about the Chandelier Bar is that it's just a center of downtown New Orleans. You have the French Quarter steps away, the Central Business District and the warehouse just steps away. It's a hub of positive energy and excitement. And I think that will never die. The place is beautiful. The team here is incredible. We love the way that the energy feels here. And I think that it's got legs. It'll keep on.
From a financial perspective, this has exceeded our expectations. When we first started, we weren't sure how our guests were going to use the space. We weren't sure, is it going to be someplace they come in for one drink, or are they going to come multiple times during the week? And it's really become a locals bar. It's on a circuit of people that not just visiting New Orleans, but live here. And I think that's also what makes it attractive to our hotel guests. You know, as travelers, we don't want to have to sit there and be with more of us travelers. We want to be with the locals. And so the fact that we were able to build such an incredible local base, we want this to be a showcase for all the talent that wants to come into New Orleans, to be center stage, and that just continues the story of that New Orleans cocktail culture and really paying respect to that.
Behind every great story of business success, there is one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, or even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had a legendary investor, Benjamin Graham. And Michael Mina has George Marone. Michael fell in love with cooking as a teenager growing up in Washington State. And after convincing his skeptical parents that his future was in fact in food, he enrolled in the Culinary Institute of America to perfect his craft. It was while he was a culinary student that he wound up in George's kitchen. George became not just Michael's boss, but a collaborator and partner. Today, Michael has Michelin stars, James Beard Awards, and more than 30 restaurants to his name. But he says none of this would have happened had he not cooked for George all those years ago. Chef Michael Mina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for having me.
You are a Michelin star, James Beard award-winning chef with more than 30 restaurants right now. You are out with a new book, My Egypt, as of October 8th. And we'll get into all of that, but we're sitting here for a series called The One Who Changed Everything.
Yeah.
And I want to start by asking you, who is the person who changed everything for you?
Well, you know, obviously when it comes to food and restaurants, I would have to say it was George Marone. And he was the chef of the Hotel Bel Air. And I was a student at the Culinary Institute of America. And it's kind of a funny story because when you're a student at the Culinary Institute of America, you do your externship in the middle of school. I applied at the Bel Air because I wanted to work at a hotel, and it was in Los Angeles. My brother lived there. And so I was hired by a chef named George, did all my paperwork and everything. And then I got there, and the day before I was supposed to go to work, I called and asked for the chef, and there was a totally different voice on the phone. And it was a different George, and the George that had hired me was not the chef anymore. And this George said, I don't hire externs, blah, 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 you know. And so I was persistent. I went there a few times and, you know, got to know him. And then he ended up hiring, giving me a chance. And we became, you know, really close, really, really good friends. We became the best of friends. He was a big influence. His style of cooking, I had not really seen that yet. And I just thought it was pretty dynamic. It was kind of, he was from New York. He had worked for Charlie Palmer, the River Cafe. And so it was kind of New York meets California. And so that had a big influence. And then we ultimately did our first restaurant that we were both actually owners in San Francisco together. And he was with me for a couple of years and then he left.
That's amazing. So he didn't even hire you. He inherited you from another George.
Yeah.
And then you basically keep showing up to say, hey, please keep me hired.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, you end up co-owners of a restaurant. Talk to me about opening Aqua together. What was that process like? And did you always feel like an intern, or what was it that maybe equalized the playing field among someone who had been boss and extern?
by that point, we had worked together for a while after I'd gotten out of school, and we had stayed very close while I was in school the second year. And then I had gone and worked for Charlie Palmer, and the pastry chef that was at Aqua was also a Charlie Palmer alum and was going back to open Oriel and ended up being the chef of Oriel. So my second year of culinary school, I got to go to Oriel every weekend and work. And that really, I think, had the biggest impact on me of, you know, being in school and then getting to, you really going to a restaurant in New York. And at that time, Oriel was kind of groundbreaking in New York because there was amazing restaurants, but a lot of the higher end restaurants were French, and Oriel had that American twist to it. So then at that point, you know, when it came time to do Aqua, really started out, George was the chef and I was the chef de cuisine. And then George left after a couple years, and then I took it over for 11 years before I started Mina Group.
When you think about what you've learned from George, is it more leading a kitchen and leadership style, or are there aspects of your cooking that would not exist had you not cooked with him?
George was really I used to call him the best dining room chef I ever met because, you know, he really was great at engaging with tables. He would get to know his guests, and that was something when you're young, it's a little nerve-wracking to like go approach a table. I was, 20 years old, 21 years old, so it's a little nerve-wracking to go approach a table, and so I think I learned that from him.
So Aqua was the first restaurant that you opened, is that correct?
Yes.
How did one restaurant become a restaurant group that now has more than 30 restaurants?
That's a good question. So the second restaurant was Aqua Bellagio and in Las Vegas. And that was really a big stage because at that time, I think it isn't the Las Vegas we know today. It's now going on 26 years. And so at that time, people were still very skeptical chefs were about going to Las Vegas. We didn't know we were going to be able to get our product. I mean, I had my fish purveyor that would drive my fish from the Bay Area, and then I'd have him get all my produce and stick that in his truck and everything else at the beginning. And now you can get things in Vegas you can't get in San Francisco. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I think that, learning what really brought that to life was there's two types of, there's multiple ways to do a restaurant, but really at the end of the day, there's, leasing a restaurant and paying for everything, building it out, doing, and that, that's really that's the chef owner model. And maybe in some case you buy the building or whatever, but that's the chef, or the restaurateur owner model. And then there's the model of the partnership model where you partner with hotels and casinos and things of that nature. And so what I really learned by that relationship was this is the model, this partnership when you find the right partners. And so what we really do is just focus on the partnerships with the hotels because it really gives us the ability to create, innovate, the things they want from us, create, innovate, operate the restaurants, design, work on the design. And you don't do as much of the back office, as much of the, you don't have to, when you're a chef, everybody thinks you know everything and you don't. And so like the toilet breaks, oh, chef, the toilet's broke. So what do you want me to do about, And so
they didn't teach that at the CIA, did they?
And so it's kind of nice to be in a hotel because you can call it engineering, and they'll come fix it. And so it gives you a little bit of that ability to focus on that. And so that's where we started. I had Aqua for many years and did 8 restaurants with my team with Aqua. And then it was time to move on and do my own thing. And in 2003, I partnered with Andre Agassi and Stephanie Graff.
That's really interesting because In reading about you, I had read that Andre Agassi played a role in your group now, and I'm wondering, how did you first meet? Because right now we have the U.S. Open in New York City, and chefs now cook for the U.S. Open, but that's a relatively new phenomenon. So how did you and Andre Agassi get connected?
So it's funny because, Andre is, the epitome of Las Vegas, right? I mean, this is a person that single-handedly has made such an impact on the world. Dr. Stedman, who does he's an extremely well-known doctor for knees and hips and things of that nature. He would come to my restaurant a lot when he was in San Francisco and was a friend, and he called me up and he said, hey, I'm going to bring Andre Agassi and Stephanie Graf in tonight for dinner. And I was like, yes, I've never met, he's like one of the people I've always wanted to meet because of the Las Vegas connection, and I hadn't met him. He brought him in for dinner, and I think we ended up sitting at the table till almost 1:30 in the morning talking about food. And then we just got to be, friends. And he kind of knew a little bit about what I was going through and that I was going to start something on my own. And he always told me, if you start something on your own, call me. And so the joke always was, I'd tell him, because I wrote a list of people and that I was going to call to, to help me start the business. And when I went to Andre said, you don't need to go to anybody else. I'll just do the whole thing. And he's like, you came to me first. I said, yeah, I did it in alphabetical order and you were AA. But no, I couldn't have dreamed of having a better partner.
Do you think you would have this many restaurants?
No. Oh, God, no. Oh, no. No, not even close. I mean, one owned restaurant is it's real. It's stressful and it's a lot of work.
Does the hotel partnership ever interfere with recipe creation? Do you ever have anyone from that side say, oh, I think that flavor combination is a little too risky right now, or?
Not really. I mean, again, I think you pick your partners and your partners pick you. And I think that probably maybe earlier on there was a little bit more of that, but I think one of the few luxuries of getting old is they're coming to you, I think, for a lot of your signatures and things of that nature. And so you have a good amount of freedom. And honestly, I'm like, I don't have an issue with that. I'm not the person because that's how we do it as a team right now anyhow. I mean, I have great chefs in our company and we love to work together. I mean, we built a whole platform called Recipe Exchange where we could exchange recipes, work on dishes together, everything else. It doesn't need to be about one person.
Recipe Exchange has 15,000 recipes on it.
It does. Yeah.
How do you and your team keep coming up with so many recipes? Where does your inspiration come from?
Well, you just do the math on it. Like if you have, 30 plus restaurants, you have a minimum of 4 seasons a year that you're changing dishes, and then you're archiving everything. It adds up quick, And so we have what it did was it created a process. And when you create a process, when you don't have a process, I think is when you start to really stress yourself out and you start to end up with kind of mediocre work. And when you have this many restaurants, you really needed a process because a process gives everybody a chance to have a voice and to be able to be part of it, and then gives them the clarity, like you're a new chef. Okay, this is your playing field. Like the corporate chefs might do, and myself might do the initial menu in a restaurant, and then there might be 50% of the menu, if it's a concept we've already done, that stays pretty much the same, and we just change produce throughout the year.
Which I think is a good segue to the book that you just released, My Egypt, Cooking from My Roots.
Yeah.
You spent 7 years working on this book. Can you talk about why it was so important for you to write this?
So 7 years and 6 trips. And it was really important because, number one, I think that I could ask 20 people that don't have ties to Egypt about Egyptian food, and you'd get 20 different answers. And like most cuisines, right, there's a lot of history that goes into what cuisine is. So the reason it's called My Egypt is because I am by far not the authority on Egyptian cooking. Didn't set out to write that book and say, I'm the authority, this is what we do. It's my journey, and my journey for many years, most people don't even know that I'm from Egypt, and I wanted it to be right on the cover of this is my journey. So I grew up in a town that was, 8,000 people in the center of Washington State, and then there was like 5,000 people at the university, but the real people that I grew up with were the people, in the town. And it was the second largest rodeo in the nation, to tell you a little bit about the demographic, and I was Egyptian. And also at that point, Michael is my middle name, but I still used my first name, which was Ashraf. And so, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because you have to learn as a child, you have to, it's hard to be very different than everybody else. And so like people coming over, I never wanted people to come to my house because my house smelled different than everybody's house because of what my mom cooked. But my mom had 7 aunts and uncles that all lived right around us. And so, the weekends it's 30, 40 people, table filled with food. My mom always cooked. So what I knew of Egypt, and I loved the food and loved the memories of it and the smell, I loved it. But what I knew of it wasn't what my mom and my aunts cooked. And so I knew the staples, but I only knew how they did them, because there isn't a lot of restaurants that do, it's mostly street food. And when you really think about food, you've got your street food, you've got, more of your family food, like what people eat at home. And then for a cuisine to start to really get into the public eye, a lot of times you need like chefs or people like Michael Salmanov, or, and you start to see like Israeli food, Lebanese food. You need it to get it to the restaurant world above the street food level. And you don't see a lot of restaurants like that are Egyptian, that are anything besides like, almost like just glorified street food. And so the story was like, okay, this is what I grew up eating. I want to go to Egypt. I want to see really how it's done, not just the way my mom made it. I want to see, because, doing it at home is different than doing it in that country. I want to see exactly, how a lot of this food is made. I want to learn more about the food. And then I want to take that food, pay homage to the traditional way it's made in Egypt, and then put innovation and product to it, to where you can put it into a great restaurant in the United States. This is one of those type of journeys that once you start it, it's like I thought it was going to take me a year. I said it took 7 years because there was so much to unravel. I learned really quickly that a lot of what I ate growing up had an enormous amount of Greek influence in it, because of all the time. Egypt's been ruled by so many different, it's been invaded so many times, right? So there's that. And then there's, a lot of true staples of Egypt, and dating all the way back to the pharaohs. And then there's things that, everyone's going to argue, but there's a lot of, at least put the argument out there, like foie gras invented in Egypt. That's an argument. You ask the French, they'll tell you yes. People, things like that, beer, wine. And so there's a lot there to unravel. And then you get into the products, and like the products like mangoes. Mangoes are like pineapples in Hawaii. There's like, I think 17 to 19 different varieties. When it's mango season, like, the group of chefs that I traveled with the whole time on all the trips, we had like 15 to 20 chefs. We would all travel together. I'd take them with me everywhere, and they'd show me different things, and then we'd all go back late at night and cook together. And every morning they'd come with this bag of mangoes, and I would be like, "You're crazy! This is a garbage bag. I mean, this is like the size of a garbage bag." Every day the mangoes were done. We would eat them throughout the course. They were so good. They're like, it's like eating candy.
I want to rewind many years to the first time you told your parents you wanted to be a chef. Can you talk about their reaction?
So I was 15 when I knew I wanted to be a chef, and I'm fortunate in that fact that a lot of people don't know what they want to do when they're 15 and actually do it, and that's like, never waver from it. So it took 2 years before I got the courage up to tell my parents, because, when you're from, and this, I don't, a lot of times when I tell the story, people tell me this isn't exclusive to Egypt, but you get three choices. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, but you can do any of the three. And chef is not one of them, especially back in '84, and there's a word for it, it's called tabach. Tabach, and tabach, it's kind of like you're a servant. You're gonna be we moved all the way here, we immigrated and everything, so our son could, be, a tabach, And so my mom was on the ground, praying and the whole 9 yards. My father is, who is an amazing, I got great parents. My father never, ever really ever yelled at us or anything. It's like probably one of the first times he really yelled at me. And so it was, it took a minute to convince them.
But you convinced them, and your dad had a role in you going to the CIA, is that correct?
He did. When he started to see that that's all that I cared about, no matter what I went to college for a semester. I was supposed to go for a year, and all I would talk about was cooking. And at that point I was cooking the Space Needle in Seattle, and all I would talk about was my job. And so my dad on his own got on a plane, went and found the Culinary Institute of America, did a bunch of research on his own and said, okay, if you're gonna do it, you have to go to the best school, and you better be dedicated, and this better be real, because, you're gonna have to stick to it.
What do they say about your career now?
It was their idea.
As you look back at your career, let's go back to George Marone. Where do you think you would be had you not had that externship with him?
I don't know. I mean, I am motivated, I am dedicated, so I don't know. It's hard to answer that question. I think everything happens for a reason. I think that I know I still would have worked very hard. I know I still would have, done the same, I would have put the same effort. Maybe I might have put even more effort into it because it might have been a bumpier road. I don't know. It's a tough question, because the most honest answer is I just don't know, because I would not have changed my dedication to my craft and to what I'm doing. I love being in the restaurant. I love opening the restaurants. I love that piece of like watching the team when they click, when they're like, all of them, are like kind of deer in headlights at the beginning when you're in the room and everyone's, going through the training, and it all sounds great until it's like, what did the Mike Tyson say? Everything's great until you get punched in the mouth, right, or whatever, until you've got 200 people in the dining room, and then like it all has to come to life. But then at like 3 or 4 days into it, watching that shift and then being in the restaurant, that's what I love. And so I would be doing that for sure. That piece would have never changed, because that's the piece I love about it, is being in the restaurant. So I don't know, would I have this many restaurants? Would I have one restaurant? I'm not sure.
Have you stayed in touch with him, or does he know?
George? Oh, yeah.
Does he know the impact he's had on your career?
Oh, of course. Oh, he calls himself the trunk, and we're branches. Yeah, George is not afraid to give himself credit, trust me.
Do you think you've been the one for any of your underlings?
Everybody always asks or wants to put you in this box when you have this many restaurants and this many people that have come through your restaurants and gone on to do amazing things. People want to put you in this box as you're everyone's mentor. And I'm not a buyer in that for me, because I did it when I was young, and I would say we did it as like, it's always been a team. It's always been like, I'm learning from them, they're learning things from me and from our group, and you put it all together and you come up with, this is what we do as a group. Now, people come through and they definitely take things from that, but that doesn't mean I'm their mentor. And I'm not that big on that word, in all honesty, for me. I just am not. I think that I've worked with people that have gone on to do phenomenal things, like unbelievable, and I'm just glad that they worked with us. But I learned from them, they learned from me, and they learned from us and everything else. I still talk to people all the time, give anybody, they don't have to work for us, even other people, that are in the industry that are expanding or whatever, call me all the time and I'll give them advice. Doesn't mean I'm their mentor.
No, but you'd be surprised. We've interviewed some folks for this series who have referenced a passing conversation with someone that really, they say, changed the course of their career. So you might not even know that you've been the one who's changed something for everyone else. Michael, Mina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I was in New York City, but I lived in Jersey. And when I went home into Jersey and I popped into a local liquor store, I realized that that same bottle that I was seeing on a liquor store shelf in Manhattan for $300 was $150 in Jersey. And I was like, wait a second, there's a real disconnect here if I can drive over a bridge and pay half the price. Whiskey and alcohol distribution in general is really, really siloed, state by state, country by country, and there's no transparency in the market to figure out what you should be paying, what the real market price is, and what other people are willing to pay for bottles that they can't get their hands on. So Baxus really came to be as a way to bridge that gap, to create transparency in the market and access so people anywhere in the world could buy and trade bottles that they might not have readily available to them. Baxus is a secure vaulting platform and marketplace. And so what that means is people send us their personal collections. And these are bottles that could be new releases, and these are bottles that in some cases are from the 1800s and early 1900s. We provide temperature-controlled insured storage and vaulting solutions. And then those bottles go into their account. So users access a dashboard where they can see the bottles that they have in their account, interesting information about the bottles, historical information. And then the most important part for a lot of them is that they can actually track the prices. And so we provide all of the auction data, secondary pricing data that we can gather in a chart for them to track the values and then allow them to list their bottles for sale directly. What we found, and kind of our little joke, but our real growth hack is not going to the whiskey collectors, but we go to their significant others and we're like, hey, so what if you could get free storage and insurance for all of the stuff taking up your house? And 2 days later, we get a call, my wife would like these 300 bottles out of my house by tomorrow. For anyone looking for, a growth hack in the collectible space, let me tell you, go to the spouses, not the collectors. One of the issues with auction houses, which I've used in the past, is you'll send in your bottles, it'll take a couple of weeks, then they run the auction for a couple of weeks, then it takes them a couple of weeks to collect the funds, and by the time they're done with everything, it's 2-3 months between when you sent in your bottle and when you get paid. And that drives a lot of people to gray markets that exist, private groups where there's a lot of fraud because you don't have that layer of security. And so what we wanted to do was create that instantaneity of it, allow you to buy more things, allow you to sell more things. We do a 360-degree scan of every bottle at Baxus, and the reason for this is multifold. One is the authentication process and being able to run computer vision models to double check on the authenticity. But the other one is that when you're buying something rare and collectible, the condition matters. Trading cards get sent to PSA or CGC for grading. That doesn't exist for whiskey. So I want to make sure, is the label in pristine condition? Is it ripped? Is the tack strip torn? How does the liquid look inside? And so all of that is really important to the buyer. And even when you're using websites or liquor store websites, they're usually using stock images. And so you don't know if you're getting the exact bottle that they're telling you about. Sometimes they might even get the addition or something wrong because the store owner doesn't know. And most brands actually reuse UPC codes. So you'll actually scan a barcode and it'll come up as the exact same as last year's edition. They don't change it for year to year. So a guy who works in the store doesn't even know. we first launched, NFTs were at their absolute height. So people are talking Bored Apes and JPEGs and all that. And we're like, guys, this is great technology, but like you're missing what it can be used for. What was really important for us with Baxus was building both for the future, as well as the interoperability that blockchain provided and the security. So when you trade someone a token, they own that bottle now and they can redeem and ship that bottle. And if you're a blockchain user, if you're in Web3, if you understand it, there are so many things you can do. The other day, somebody traded a bottle of whiskey that was stored in Baxus's vault, because they're all tokenized, for a Magic the Gathering card that was tokenized in somebody else's vault. That's what this unlocks, is that in the future, all of these different blockchain protocols can now fit in with your whiskey collection. No one cares about what web services platform Netflix is hosted on. They care that they can click a button and watch a movie. Our users are not going to care how we build it, they just care that it works. Our core user, the people that we really wanted to appeal to, was whiskey lovers, was collectors, and not just whiskey, but spirits and wine in general. And so we need to bring it to where they were at. And for most of them, they're familiar and they're comfortable with a website. They can log in with an email, they can pay with a credit card. And so all of those are things that we put really at the forefront of Baxus. You can use crypto if you want to, but you don't have to know anything about it. I had built and run small businesses that I had built up, but it's very different than trying to build a venture-grade enterprise. So it was tough at the beginning to get kind of that interest, I would say, even from like VCs, where like they understood the idea of like what they're calling real-world assets, or RWAs, but they didn't know much about the whiskey markets or the spirits markets or the wine market and understand how large they were. We kind of had this opportunity to try and fail a lot, at a small scale, leading into the end of 2022 when FTX collapsed, and we were like, no, we're like heads down focused on building for the whiskey community, building for the spirits community. And so that bear market didn't really affect us. If anything, it made us stronger, because when it started to ease up, people are like, wait, these guys are still around. 2023, when we launched the marketplace, we started to get that momentum. We expected people would send in a couple of bottles here and there, but we started to get real collections. We had a substantial amount of trading going on. Whiskey collectors were raving about the platform because they're like, wait, these are bottles I've been looking for. It's an ability for me to sell. And that really took off and caught some VC attention. And so we ended up raising our seed round and really just been scaling ever since. The nice thing about SaaS companies is, as long as you have a computer and an internet connection, you can run your company. For us, we need physical space to store the bottles. So we are opening actually our second vault now in Jersey. We're going to be opening a couple more in the US at the end of this year, and then one overseas, our first overseas vault, and scaling both the physical infrastructure globally to add more users, as well as the engineering support on the back end to be able to really deliver features and products to those users. There's this disconnect between brands and consumers. A distillery will sell their bottles to a distributor, who sells their bottles to a liquor store, who sells their bottles to you, who sells the bottles to me, who sells the bottles to someone else. And so by the time it gets to the end consumer, the brand has no idea who their biggest fans actually are. We can say there is an account that has 50 of your bottles. And so being able to connect and show brands, first of all, here's how you can really connect with your consumers, which we've already done with a couple of brands, and they've loved it because we did a private barrel pick down at Wild Turkey. And so we went into the database and we found the two largest collectors of single barrel Russell's Reserves, like Wild Turkey's product. And we brought two users down who have each of them over 50 or 60 bottles of like single barrel Russell's Reserve. And they had never met anyone from the brand. They loved the product, they loved the brand, and they got to pick that barrel with us themselves, with Bruce Russell, and like they were huge fans before, but now they're lifelong fans. And that's really special also because there is such a social and a nostalgia element tied into whiskey and into spirits. It's what did you see your dad drinking? What did you see your grandfather drinking? What was your mother drinking? And so that kind of shapes the way that people perceive alcohol. And so building those like real connections and not just making people think of them as large companies is really cool and really special, because the people who work in the distilleries and in the brands really care. They're really passionate. What's cool about the blockchain element is because each of the bottles is scanned, and this was something else that really motivated me, and it lives permanently on the blockchain. We now have this digital encyclopedia and this digital archive, because the thing about whiskey is it's so finite. So a single barrel, an old release, once they're gone, they're gone. They're gone from the face of the earth. They can never recreate the 1976 Jack Daniels, which might have just been to most people a regular Jack Daniels in the 70s, but now sells for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, because there are just so few of them left, and the whiskey is genuinely different. And so, yes, it's sad to see them go, but it's also great knowing that they're actually getting consumed, because as a whiskey lover, like I want to sit around with my friends and my family and enjoy like a little piece of history. And so it makes me happy knowing that somebody's doing that, but it makes me happier knowing that even if those bottles vanish off the face of the earth, that there will be a permanent digital archive so that if somebody does stumble across one of these bottles and 50 or 100 years from now, all of the information that they'll need will be stored on-chain because of Baxus.
The Sazerac Bar right here in New Orleans originally started with the Sazerac Coffee House, opened in the middle 1800s over in the French Quarter, and then it opened up in the early 1900s in our current gift shop. This bar originally opened in the hotel in 1939 as just the main bar of the hotel. Fast forward 10 years to 1949, the owner of the hotel bought the rights to the Sazerac Bar, and since 1949, it has been the Sazerac Bar here in the Roosevelt. The second you walk in, you know, you're just shown this beautiful space that's all made from one African walnut tree, whether it's the side of the walls or the bar top. Then you have the murals to see. Paul Nines, a famous painter here in town, painted them. These are the original murals that opened in 1939. We have a high standard of hospitality. The bartenders are dressed impeccably, right? White jackets, white shirts, black ties, and the standard that they execute their service as well as their cocktails is bar none. When a guest comes to the Sazerac Bar, they're going to expect a place that introduces you to the city of New Orleans quite well. We have a very strong passion for cocktails that were around when this bar was opened, right? The Sazerac originated at the Sazerac Coffee House. Dr. Peychaud's was there with his bitters. A lot of people would come for coffee and for some of these little solutions to help their stomach. Lo and behold, men started hanging out there. He started adding a little bit of brandy, a little bit of cognac, and it developed into a very simple cocktail that started as cognac, Peychaud's bitters, simple syrup. Later, it has adjusted to include a little bit of the absinthe. And in the late 1800s, there was a big bug infestation over in Europe, and brandy exports were essentially cut to zero. At that time, rye whiskey was developing in the United States, and it was a very simple switch that a lot of people enjoyed, and that's still the recipe that we use to this day. On average, we make about 4,000 of these a week, and that's probably on an average week. In December, when we have Winter Wonderland here, it can be twice as much, if not more. Ramos Gin Fizz is a great cocktail that we have on our menu, and we take pride in that. It is a cocktail with gin, lemon and lime, egg white, cream, a little bit of orange blossom water, and soda water. So it creates this nicely balance of floral and botanical and sweet and sour, and then creaminess that brings this nice silky texture that really creates a very unique drink that not a lot of places will have on their menu because it's complicated to make. You have to shake it right. You have to make sure that the glassware is chilled. And the other nice part of that is it creates a nice foaming top that rises above the glass that the straw can sit perfectly in. So not only the recipe in itself, but the technique that it takes to make it, the passion that you must have to really make sure that it is executed right, and then it's just an amazing drink to enjoy. Huey Long, the governor here, would come here frequently, and that was his drink of choice. He would buy rounds and rounds for everybody to enjoy. When he would visit New York City, he would fly the bartenders here from the Sazerac Bar up to New York City just to teach the bartenders there how to make a proper Ramos Gin Fizz. Tales of the Cocktail is a collection of the best minds of food and beverage in the world. To be nominated as a finalist for the top hotel bar in the country, it shows you that this team has such a deep passion for something of this nature, and they're well deserving. I think that the high standard of just hospitality, especially food and beverage, is just a core entity of what New Orleans is, because our neighbors and everyone else carry themselves at such a high standard, and we believe that we want to be the best of the best. It only elevates us all. A rising tide raises all ships, and the community here has done such a great job just elevating the hospitality and especially the food and beverage scene, and to highlight that, the cocktail scene.
We're here today with Emma Chamberlain, the co-founder of Chamberlain Coffee. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. So you are the co-founder of Chamberlain Coffee, but you're also many, many other things. Your career spans from traveling for things like fashion weeks to creating your own independent content to building this company. It's a pretty non-traditional career, especially for someone of 22 years old. So how, when you were growing up, did you envision what a career would look like for you? Did it look like this?
It definitely did not look like this. I think it's very easy to sort of fall into a traditional sort of plan. And so, you know, I imagined myself going to college for at least 4 years. You know, it was a goal for me to go to a really good school and hopefully get, you know, some sort of scholarship maybe. Like that was a huge, huge focus for me. And then, you know, I had a few job interests. I was really interested in math and science. So I was considering, I actually wanted to be an anesthesiologist for a little bit because I was like a little too young to understand that that's a really complicated job. And I just saw that it made a lot of money and that it was math and science related. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that.
Had you ever been put under anesthesia before?
Yes, and that's actually one of the other reasons why I kind of wanted to do it, because my anesthesiologist gave me such a great experience. He like played a music video for me while I was going under, and then I woke up and it was like nothing ever happened, and he really calmed my anxiety as an anxious person. So I was very grateful for him. But again, I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. I don't know how that would have worked out for me.
In your early days creating YouTube videos, you really kind of stumbled upon editing and shooting style that really ultimately skyrocketed your success. Walk me through those early days and kind of finding your niche on such a saturated and growing platform at the time.
So I started, as most people start with anything, mimicking what was out there, because I think that's how you learn. If you've never done something before, the best thing you can do is copy others. So I started out by definitely copying. I was doing what was popular for people my age, similar to me, which was a lot of, you know, makeup, fashion, beauty related content, pretty prim and proper, very, you know, nice setup, nice background, the whole thing. And, you know, maybe a more sort of like personality-wise, maybe a bit more refined in a way, right? And I mimicked that for a while. And then, you know, I made it a goal to make a video every day during the summer, because I started during the summer. And when you're doing something as consistently as every day, you naturally get bored of things and want to start trying new things. So I owe my fast evolution to that let me do it every day sort of goal. And I, you know, very quickly became bored of that thing. Also realized that that wasn't me. Like it works for other people, it just doesn't work for me. So then I naturally started vlogging and just like filming my everyday. And I ended up loving that the most. And then again, when you're doing something every day, it evolves. So very quickly, I was like, well, I'm bored of this vlogging, this way of vlogging. Let me, you know, build it up. And my dad told me from the day that I started my channel that I need to be like fully myself. And I hadn't been in the very beginning. This all happened in the span of like 2 months, by the way, but he was like, you need to be yourself. And I really struggled with that for the first month, but very quickly I became comfortable and was able to do that because I was just forcing myself to dive in head first and just get good at it, really. And it became this goal of like making a video that's as entertaining as possible, but also as me as possible. And also as funny as possible. I wanted it to be funny at the time. That was like my main goal. But it became this sort of art form for me. Like, how can I make the mundane, you know, me being mundane, the subject matter being mundane, as interesting as possible? And then that has sort of followed me ever since.
Definitely. Throughout that journey, you started it in high school. You've had quite the change of, you know, your character online, the way that you're, you know, performing online, the different types of content, your style evolution. How do you describe the different eras of Emma Chamberlain?
Yes. So I would say the very beginning is like Emma being a YouTuber. I didn't fit quite right there. So then it became Emma being her wild teenage self, honestly, for many years. Like just playing. It was like Emma's playing. She's having fun. The videos are like super energetic. I had a lot of energy naturally at that time. That's just who I was. So these videos were very energetic. And then I think it's sort of transitioned to like, I sort of had maybe an existential crisis, which was a more quiet, more maybe aesthetically driven sort of video style, less personality. I was going through a personality shift myself, so it was very hard for me to figure out, okay, what am I putting out there? So that was more of a quieter time. I call that the quiet time. And then I would say where I'm at now is like very much sort of a mix of the two, actually. Like there's still, the personality is coming back. I'm feeling like, okay, I know who I am as an adult now. I can show myself again, and that feels comfortable. But, you know, as an adult, I'm more aesthetically driven than I was as a kid. So like the videos, I want them to look cool too, like, and look nice. But now YouTube is really fun for me again too, because I think you go through a weird, when something becomes your job, you know, your relationship with it changes. So I think now I'm enjoying it again. And I don't have as much time to do it as I wish I did, but that time will come later and I can play around even more again later.
I know in other interviews and in speaking with other people, you've talked a lot about your intuition guiding you, and that, you know, in many ways it told you to step back for a while from YouTube.
Yeah.
Are you starting to move back in that direction again? How are you kind of managing where your like heart and soul is telling you to go next?
Yes, my heart and soul is loving YouTube again. Like I'm ready to be back. I like feel ready to be back. I think the main reason for that is, well, two main reasons. Number one, because I think I've been able to sort of develop my personality as an adult off screen. It's very hard to develop your personality when you're on camera every day. I don't know what it is, but it can stunt growth weirdly. And I felt that intuitively. And I was like, I need to transition from being a teenager to being an adult by myself for a minute. Like I have to, because I only know how to be on camera as a teenager. I don't know who I am when the camera's off, so I had to shut the camera off. You know, I've been able to develop that. And now, you know, it's natural for me again to be on camera. But on top of that, you know, I've been able to diversify sort of my businesses and things like that so that I have a bit more space to change myself on YouTube. It's very scary to change something when it's your job and it's working.
Yeah.
And so because I've diversified now, if I want to change things up on YouTube, I'm not afraid, because that is not my job anymore technically, right? So it's given me so much freedom, and it's allowing me to re-enter into it, which I've not even nearly re-entered it to the level that I plan to, but you know, it's like I am able to play there. But also I think with me and YouTube, like I'm more in the mood to make longer videos that, you know, maybe I only upload every once in a while. Like that's what I'm more interested in. You can't do that if it's your job. So there are so many good things happening with my relationship with YouTube that just took time to figure out. And it was hard because I kept trying to put myself back into it too soon, but intuitively and emotionally, I'm loving it again. And my relationship with it is very healthy.
Yeah, well, I'm sure many people will be excited to hear that. But in terms of your job today, what do you then consider it? What are you relying on to ensure that the YouTube can be something that's for, you know, a passion project or something you just love to do?
Yes, there are a few things that don't contribute to like paying the bills, right? But maybe there's longer term goals with them. Like I think YouTube is absolutely that. Even Chamberlain Coffee is that. You know, I'm putting all of the money back into that business right now. And so I'm not, that is for now a passion project really. I mean, it's a business, but it can't, I'm fortunate that it gets to be a passion project because I'm not relying on that for my income. Right now, my podcast has become sort of my, what I would say is my traditional like job, you know, like that's my job, but also, you know, brand partnerships as well. And I've really just loved the way that I've been able to do brand partnerships more recently because they feel much more like collaborations now more than ever. I enjoy the creative side of working with brands and marketing brands. Like I love that. And so, you know, I do that a lot with Chamberlain Coffee, but I also do that a lot with other brands as well. You know, figuring out creative ways and intriguing ways to market product. That passion it was unexpected, but has become something that I love.
I definitely want to ask about that because I think that the way that you've worked with brands like Levi's, Aritzia, Louis Vuitton, all these kind of fashion houses that have their own marketing teams, their own kind of ideas of where they want to take their campaigns and their partnerships and things like that. What is your role when you come into partnerships like that? How do you ensure that anything that you're doing is still really, keyed in on like what the Emma Chamberlain brand is, even though it is partnering with these other major companies?
I think it's a balance because, brands have their own sort of vision, and I absolutely respect that. You're taking two identities, right? I mean, I think it's a little different because one is sort of a brand identity and one is sort of a personal identity. But, there's two forces here, and it's finding a brand who's willing to do a few things. Number one, create something that feels us. But number two, them allow me to, when it comes to like my social media, for example, or the content that I'm putting out into the world from my hands, right? That feels me ultimately, because I don't feel comfortable putting something out that doesn't feel like me. But then at the same time, I also do that for them. So there are times when I'm a canvas for them, right? And that's sort of this compromise that we are, not even compromise, but that's sort of a part of the collaboration. Both parties get to be themselves with the other present, but then also there's something that's us too. And maybe that's like the main campaign that goes out into the world. Maybe that's, a video that we make for their channel or something. It's like everybody gets what they want and what they need. It's complicated, but it is worth it because I think that it creates the most intriguing, exciting sort of content at the end of the day.
Definitely. Building your own brand then, Chamberlain Coffee, I'm sure that's a different experience coming into, whether it's a marketing campaign or a social media post or all the packaging of the coffee and all those sorts of things. Why do you think you were the right person to start this brand? Obviously, you had a lot of coffee in your YouTube videos. You talked about it a lot. It was a big part of your life. But taking that from, a video that you share with people online to a consumer product is a pretty big jump. So why were you the right person to create a consumer product surrounding coffee?
Well, I think for one, I have built a level of trust with my personal audience around coffee because for years, not only was it a huge topic of my videos just naturally, but also I've recommended coffee places. I've recommended coffee products. And I think, there's a level of trust with me and my taste for coffee, for one. But for two, I've always been obsessed with coffee as a product from, cafe culture to also other caffeinated beverages. That has always been such a special thing to me. And it's always been a passion for me since before I started my YouTube. And I think when it comes to creating a brand, I'm a home barista just like the rest of us in a way. And what was inspiring to me was like, how can I create a brand that feels bright, feels fun, feels playful, feels inviting? And also when it comes to even developing the blends, creating something for my generation, also creating something that's approachable, but also something that feels like it's for everyone in a way, like even flavor profile wise.
Coming from the creative side of things, so having that experience in YouTube and content creation and marketing and branding and the ways that you did, what were the steps that you had to take to ensure that you did have people who were qualified to allow you to create a product that people would consume? Because there are so many regulations that come with that. Many steps through the process, whether it is like ingredients, even manufacturing and packaging. What were the steps that you had to take to build a team that you could really come together to build a product like this?
Yes. Well, I think it is really filling the gaps. Like when, I have maybe the creative vision, I have maybe the overall vision, but I can't do it all. As you're building the business, you're slowly but surely, almost like chaotically figuring out what you need next, okay, the first step was finding a company that already exists that could help to create basically coffee pros who can roast the beans in the exact way that I want them so that it can taste exactly how I want it to taste. And so it was finding that. And then it was working with investors so that we had the money to eventually rebrand. And then when we were rebranding, it's finding, creative illustrators and people like that to come in and build it out. And then from there, it's been like, okay, now we need a CEO. Okay, who's that going to be? And it's interviewing as many people as you possibly can until you feel it in your heart, like they get it.
So are you interviewing everybody that comes through the company? And besides that, like, what else does your day-to-day entail with Chamberlain Coffee?
Yes, I'm in a lot of the interviews. A lot of times it is really challenging because, I have so many, at this point, pieces of my business that I have to manage, and there are some that I need to be more involved in than others. And so when it comes to like interviewing, for example, a lot of times the beginning stages of interviews, for example, those will happen with the team that I've already built out. Like, I'm lucky that now we have that built out so that when I'm in the interview and I'm really, making the big choices, it's instead of being 15 people, it's 2, it's 3. When it comes to the day-to-day, it's a lot of approvals. It's a lot of things coming in from the team that we've built, whether it's like creative concepts for shoots or for, campaigns or for product or for, whatever it may be. And comes to me, I send my notes, I maybe send a completely new idea. I'm like, no, it's this actually. And then it's a back and forth like that a lot of times. And what's interesting is, I'm obsessed with retail strategy. Like I love that journey as well.
Well, I'm excited to hear that you are passionate about the retail strategy, because that is something I want to talk about too. Moving into places like Walmart, Whole Foods, you are in multiple stores right now. Why was that something that you guys wanted to prioritize, and what has that process been like, moving, like you said, from just D2C to these multiple different avenues now?
D2C businesses for a long time, it was almost like the trend, right? Like sort of really leaning into social media marketing and really leaning into D2C. That was sort of the structure of the moment, especially like, what was it? During COVID, I would say for sure that was what it was. And then, coming out of COVID, it was like, okay, what do we do now? Do we want to keep that? Or do we want to play a bit? Do we want to get into the real world? And I think, are we ever going to stop shopping in store? I don't think so. I love going to the store. I mean, maybe one day it will completely not exist. We'll never go to a grocery store again. But I think that experience cannot be ignored, even during, this very digital time that we're living in. Like, we ultimately decided that we can't overlook retail. On top of that, we also, we're excited about developing something sort of ready to drink. That was always in our head, and we're like, okay, excited about doing that. Not sure exactly what that would look like for a while. It was like, okay, do we want it to be exactly my recipe? Do we want it to be, something else? What is that? Is it just like a really good black coffee? Like, what is it? But then we had some interest from retailers asking us, do you have a ready to drink beverage? And then it was like, okay, you know what? This has all been in our head, festering. And now the opportunity's here. This is something that's desirable. So we were like, okay, this is great. Let's do this. Going into ready to drink, that's a different category. It's also a category where there's some gaps, kind of for a reason, because it's a very challenging category to get right. But it's been good because we've learned a lot, and we love, and we're so proud of what we have out there now.
I know that you have some ready-to-drink stuff coming with Target that'll be launching soon. Besides that, what else is Chamberlain Coffee working on right now in terms of like what you're building for the future? I know you have some partnerships coming up for events in California and some other, campaigns and collections. So walk me through like where your sights are set for the next like 6 to 12 months.
Yes, we have some really fun collaborations with brands that have a similar sort of DNA to us. Like 818 is a great example. Base is a great example where, they're both sort of brands that were started by other girlies in this industry, which is so cool. Also two businesses that I really admire, like, specifically with 818, like, it's like, it has this sort of like young and fun sort of feel, but it's also very chic and elevated at the same time. And then there's Base, that genius, innovators in the luggage space, like genuinely. They're both brands that I respect and I admire. And so it's exciting to get to work with them and do something with them, because it's like, let's just lift each other up. That always feels good. In general, we're just excited about, various ways that we can pop up in as many places as possible and just kind of get people trying the product. When it comes to what we're developing, I mean, I think actually a lot of my focus right now is like refining what we have, weirdly enough. I mean, we've experimented a lot, and I think we figured out what works, what doesn't work. And I think we want to go back in and refine and perfect. I think especially what's exciting is, with the ready to drink lattes, like coming out with new flavors. Like that's a part of sort of refining. It's like adding more flavors, even like little things like refining the packaging, refining the branding. Like those can often get overlooked when you're trying to scale a business. You're like, well, I just need to come out with this new product that's going to be huge and it's going to be, and that's not always what it is. There are things to refine. So I think we're in a refining phase right now more than ever. And just also like coming into ourselves as a brand.
Knowing the challenges that you've gone through, but also, the exciting parts of building the brand. If you could tell yourself something the day before you started the company, what would it be?
I would tell myself that I'm going to need to be patient because things take so long. I would also tell myself it's not always going to be done perfectly the first time. It's just not. It is just not. Like we give individuals grace. You know what I mean? We give individuals grace. Like it's not always, but we try to, right? Give other human beings the space to make mistakes. But when it comes to a business, arguably rightfully so, we give much less grace. It's like, you didn't get it right the first time? Okay, peace. And understandably so, because you're paying money for a product and you want it to be done right the first time. You pay money for, an experience, you want it to be perfect. That even comes from the inside as well, where I'm like, why didn't this product do well? Like, I thought this product was gonna do well. Like, why didn't this product do well? When you open it up, it's a bunch of individuals who really care most of the time about the integrity of the brand, things being done right, the customer having a phenomenal experience. Like that's what we all want for the most part. And I think if I could have told myself anything, it would have been, these are all humans here. And, not everything's going to be perfect. We're not a machine. It might look like a machine. It might sort of feel like a machine, but it's not. It's absolutely not. And I think having grace, mainly from the inside, is so key. And being patient with myself too. Like I might have an idea and we do it and it sucks and it's not good. It doesn't work. But that's okay. You can't have ego in it either. Which luckily that's one thing I never did. I think I've always leaned closer to imposter syndrome than, ego. But I've definitely seen it as a machine and I've had to grow out of that for sure.
My last question for you, if you have some parting words to tell the audience, something that they might not know about you. I know it might be difficult because you share a lot of yourself online with the world. What is one thing that you wish people knew about you that they don't?
I think something that's interesting about me that is not maybe shown as often is how, like, I really do have this sort of bizarrely out of character sort of passion for business in a weird way. Like it doesn't make sense because all other facets of my personality could not be more the opposite. Like I've been known for everything but what we consider to be founding a brand, marketing a brand, running a business. Like nobody would have predicted this. Let's just say that. Not even myself. It happened almost on accident in a way, but I do have a passion for that, though my personality is still the same. Nobody's looking at me and saying, well, that's a businesswoman. Like when they talk to me, it's like, of course not. That's just not my personality. There is a personality, a stereotype that we associate with that. I just don't have that. I never will. And I don't have that now because of this sort of newfound passion in this experience. But like that's genuinely a passion for me. And I think most people, maybe people wouldn't know that. It's very common to see, the career trajectory that I've had. A lot of people start businesses who start in maybe entertainment and then start a business. It's very common. And there is sort of a stigma around it, like, well, it doesn't mean that you're passionate about the business. I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know where, but it's the passion is there. I really am genuinely passionate about the journey of building a business in every single little corner of that.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about all of this. I'm super excited to see where the brand and your career goes, and to see you on YouTube again soon, more regularly. I know you've been on a little, but thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you.
Being at Tales of the Cocktail is so incredible because we're not just meeting the brand representatives, but we're meeting all of the bartenders, and they are the tastemakers.
I think that the high standard of just hospitality, especially food and beverage, is just a core entity of what New Orleans is. Tales of the Cocktail is a collection of the best minds of food and beverage in the world. Not just the country, not just the state, not just the city.
Tales of the Cocktail is an incredible event where we bring not just bartenders, but the bar industry together. I've been coming to Tales of the Cocktail for almost 10 years now, and this is by far one of the most exciting ones.
This is a coming together of everyone that is so passionate about this industry and all different walks of the industry, and this is a reflection of how hard everyone works and how much they care and, you know, everything that we pour into it.
Especially within a city that is known for maybe being the most hospitable place on earth.
It's more than the parties, it's more than the awards. It's really the work that the foundation is doing to create a better industry.
Sometimes we forget how important the community is. The fact that we ended up all year in New Orleans celebrating the craft of cocktails, meeting old friends, making new ones. I'm grateful to be here, and every year it gets better.
It's a space and a place that we as cocktail or hospitality individuals have managed to build community in. And we'll hope to continue building and creating spaces where the next generation can feel safe, they can feel inspired to be the best versions of themselves.
I've been looking up to everyone that's been going to Tales for years. To be here with our friends, this whole industry is all about the community, it's all about family.
Thanks to Tales, we are all together and we support each other.
It's an opportunity to network, grow your network, meet people, look at your idols, people that you respect, introduce yourself, ask them questions that might help you grow and change the trajectory of your life.
Spirits are social. You drink with friends, you drink with new people, and you become friends.
This week we'll probably do about 1,500, maybe 2,000 Ramos Gin Fizzes, and about double that for Sazeracs. It's just a blessing. You see it year in and year out. It only continues to grow. The events get better, the activations get better, and the experience all around gets better for everyone.
Tales changed my career. Tales changed my perspective of what was possible in this industry, how far you can go. So to me, Tales is a very empowering place for anybody.
We fell into it. I mean, we were best friends. We were both very entrepreneurial. And we started cooking in the kitchen and realizing that we would be a great team. What he lacks, I make up for, and vice versa.
Cole and Brian, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to talk about all you're building with Smackin. First, before we get into all the details, give me a little 30-second intro to who you are and how you guys know each other.
Well, Brian, I'm Cole. We met as random freshman roommates at the University of Minnesota back in 2017. So, like 8 years ago almost.
Yeah. And then been best friends ever since.
Why did you guys decide to go into business together?
I mean, it's been quite the journey, to say the least. Both of us grew up on the little league field, munching sunflower seeds. And we came to college and we were very entrepreneurial. We knew we wanted to start a business. We started a couple businesses together and those didn't pan out. And so we started looking at, what needed innovation and what did we know best. And we looked at the sunflower seed market and I thought that was a great opportunity. So sophomore year, we started cooking in our college apartment and, step by step, now we're here.
What were those other businesses, I guess, you guys started? What other ventures did you try to embark on?
I mean, just really small stuff. Well, I mean, it was big picture stuff. It was like a software that we had no idea how to build it. So like Brian said, we tried to come down to what's a simple problem in our life that we've experienced that we know we could solve. And we knew how to relatively make sunflower seeds. So that's how we got to this spot.
So you guys obviously have a connection to baseball and to sunflower seeds in that way. Walk me through a little bit of that journey of you guys growing up and realizing that this is, a product that you maybe probably ate a lot as a child and then kind of turning that into something in your adult life. What are some of your personal connections to sunflower seeds and the sport of baseball?
I mean, we grew up on the Little League field, and we saw that it was the same flavors, the same salty product, and the same brands, and we knew that it could be something better.
Yeah, it was small seeds that like would cut open your mouth, like kind of like give you what's called like salty burn. And like we both kind of stopped eating sunflower seeds as we got older just because we got sick of the product. But it was something we loved as kids. And we knew there was like desire for better, obviously because we both felt that way. So it was really just kind of like leaning on past experiences of that, you know, enjoying our time in Little League, enjoying our time eating the seeds, and you know, eventually we fell out of the seed part. So
what was the first phase of Smackin? Was it just, you know, a bag that you made in the kitchen? Was there any flavor involved? Like, how did you guys make that very first step into building a product?
I mean, we just tried it out at first. So like we basically bought just like plain sunflower seeds and like put a bunch of flavoring that we got on it, and then like tumbled it, you know, put it in some little Ziploc baggies and passed them out to everyone on the floor and got some feedback. And like that summer we put in our first packaging order and, you know, kind of put together a little supply chain and entered into production in our college apartment. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Did you guys have food experience prior to this? Were either of you chefs or cooks in any way?
No experience.
I worked in a restaurant, but like I was not a cook, I was a server, so nothing touching the food before.
And what made you guys want to build a business on this? I mean, it's one thing to, you know, have a product that you want to make, something that you want to share with the friends on your floor in, you know, your college dorm, but to go from that and just sharing it with some friends to building an enterprise out of it, what was that mindset that showed you guys like this is something we can actually focus on full time?
I mean, we both like believed in ourselves and like us as a team, and we knew we wanted to do something together. So we just kind of like took it simple, took it slow. You know, like you said, start out passing out to people, slowly upgraded to like local farmers markets, softball tournaments, Little League fields. We got into like our first store, started selling online, making videos, and it just kind of like snowballed. It just got bigger and bigger. And, you know, it was always the goal and always the hope was we wanted to build a big business that we could work on full time together. It was not overnight though at all. It just took a lot of like compounding of hard work, trial and error. But
like whose responsibility is whose? What's the division of labor between the two of you and the rest of the team?
I mean, at the beginning, we did everything together. Everything from, you know, production to fulfillment to marketing and sales, finance. We did everything together. But, you know, as the business grew and, you know, we had to start dividing hats and building the team. Cole specialized in the marketing, and then I took the sales, finance, and we could, you know, share ops.
Okay, cool. And what was your previous experience that made those two kind of divisions of labor make sense for you guys?
I would even say it was based off of like previous experience. It was just kind of what we were passionate about and what we were like talented at. Like Ryan's degree was in finance, so like he had an understanding of finance way better than I did. My degree was in marketing. And it was just kind of like the roles that we fell into that we felt most comfortable with and were stronger at. You know, it's like what I lack in, Brian is very, very good at, and kind of vice versa. And it was really just the perfect partnership of like shared responsibilities. And now we have a team of people who are able to help us with the vast majority of the day-to-day stuff, and we can kind of do bigger picture things and what we really want to do now, which is fun.
So you guys were roommates in college and you were, you know, best friends before this venture. How did you decide that the two of you would be good co-founders together? Because that's a very different relationship.
It's very different.
Very different. And you rarely see it work out well. So, I mean, it's one of those things we fell into it. I mean, we were best friends and we were both very entrepreneurial. And, you know, we started cooking in the kitchen and realizing that we would be a great team. You know, what he lacks, I make up for, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's important that we were friends before, because like we had that relationship established where we had mutual trust amongst each other. We knew that we had each other's best interests at heart, and like we're able to kind of step away from the business at times and remember like we're just friends, and like we're doing this because we like love each other, care about each other, we want what's best for each other. So we always keep that in the back of our minds, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. How do you navigate if you guys disagree on something?
We just talk it through.
Yeah.
And what do you do to kind of like you said, step back, unwind from the business for a second? Is there anything that you guys will do together, any hobbies that you have to make sure that you're, you know, spending time outside of this like co-CEO, co-founder space?
Absolutely. I mean, we just hang out as friends like we always used to. So, I mean, we'll grab a beer. You know, we have dogs that will walk together. Both love to work out, play pickleball. So
yeah, like when we travel for work, like we always make time to like go check out what's local, check out like the local food scenery, and just spend time as friends. Because like I said, that's why we did this in the first place.
You mentioned too that you wanted to find something that you could really innovate on. So what does the innovation look like with Smackin? How is it different from what's on the market today?
Right. Well, look at the product. Our product is better for you. So we have lower sodium, and then bigger seeds. So a lot of the natural brands have smaller seeds than us. And then we really focus on the bold flavor. Bold, unique flavors is what Smackin's all about.
And what are some of those flavors that you guys now sell?
We got garlic parmesan, our top seller is cinnamon churro, just released a churro jalapeno. So we really focus on the unique flavors.
How did you guys land on these flavors? Those are not typical sunflower seed flavors that you just mentioned. So how did you stumble upon this kind of flavor profile?
I mean, we just like request samples of like flavors that we really like, and we just put it on the seeds and see what tastes good. If it tastes good, we'll keep working on the blend, trying to make it better. And if not, we'll just punt it for another day.
Yeah, it's really trial and error. And I mean, we look at the market, we see what's trending, but we also just, at the end of the day, it's what tastes good and what our consumers really want.
Speaking of trends, are there any trends in the food space right now, or the business space in general, that you feel like you're really latching onto or trying to use in your own ways, or are there trends that you're also like avoiding at all costs?
Absolutely. I mean, there's trends that we avoid. The trends that we're really focused on is social media and the engagement with our consumers. That's really what sets us apart is our full marketing journey. Great product, but great marketing and a full experience for the consumer.
What does the social media strategy look like for you guys today?
I mean, we're on all platforms. So like we're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. We post like short form content, long form content, statics, visuals. It's really just kind of like a combo of it all. And then like Brian said, like once people kind of get comfortable with our videos, comfortable with our content, hopefully they try our product. And within that, we've got a whole ecosphere of like emails, SMS, like VIP groups. And we have like weekly, like limited edition flavor drops to keep people excited, engaged. So it's really just kind of like getting people into the funnel through our marketing, high level marketing. And once they're in, people just love the product and love the brand.
Have you found that certain types of content are either like better at or more efficient at pulling people from just being a follower or a watcher online to a shopper?
I mean, at the end of the day, like the content that we're creating turns people into shoppers because it's most of what we do is just having people try the product. So they get to firsthand see what other people think. And it's an appealing thought, like when you can see like what another consumer thinks of the product.
How much of the consumer engagement or consumer interactions in terms of like what flavors they're suggesting or other questions or, requests that they're making, how does that play into how you're innovating on the product and deciding what's next for the company?
Right. I mean, we really listen to our consumers. So something that sets us apart is we do limited edition flavor drops. So every week we're dropping a limited flavor. It sells out really quick. And it's unique. It's red velvet, spicy guac, things that you never have tasted. So that's what really, we use that as a springboard to launch standard flavors. We get consumer feedback, see what we need to change, and then we'll use that to launch a standard flavor.
Yeah, like cheddar jalapeno was a limited edition flavor at a point in time, and we refined it based on the feedback. Like people really liked it, so we were like, okay, like this is a good flavor. And some stuff it's like, not so great, and like then and then it's like something you probably shouldn't work on.
How do you guys kind of walk the line of sticking true to yourself and the products that you want to create while also listening to customers? Is there ever any give and take in terms of someone might ask for something and you're like, that's not who we are as a company? Are those conversations ever happening between the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, like we definitely started with like what we liked because like that was just the easiest to go off of. But over time, like, and we're just going based on what our customers like at this point. And like people will suggest some wild things, and like you kind of just try to have to like listen to what everyone's saying and like stick to like what the kind of like the North Star is of like what the like vast majority of people are saying. So it's kind of just like intaking a bunch of information, digesting it, and trying to sparse out like what the popular opinion is.
What is the North Star for Smackin right now?
Bold flavors, delicious snacks.
Okay, cool. A lot of people might think that sunflower seeds are a pretty niche market to get into. Obviously, a lot of people use them, but it's essentially one product. How are you guys attempting to expand on that to ensure that you have a business that's scalable?
I mean, sunflower seeds in itself is pretty scalable. It's like about $1 billion a year industry in America. So
it's growing at 7% each year. So it's one of those industries that no one really like looks at as a big industry, but it really is. And younger consumers are snacking more frequently. So it's a growing market, and it's a market that no one's really tapped.
Totally. How much are you guys valuing direct-to-consumer purchases and those sorts of consumers versus getting into retail stores? Like I know you mentioned starting out with small, local markets and things and now scaling up to larger retailers. What is that kind of mindset that you guys have in terms of where you want to devote your time and energy into sharing these products?
Right. I mean, we really built our business direct-to-consumer first, and we're bringing that into retail. And so, I mean, the market is 80% retail, so that's where, the opportunity is, but we're laser focused on direct-to-consumer. We want to be the #1 brand online, but also in store. So next year, I mean, we'll be rolling out in a lot of national retailers. So the retail pipeline is looking great, but we're not losing focus on the online play.
What's your best advice for companies who want to get into major retailers? Because it is a huge market. Maybe people don't know about you. They see you on the stores of a grocery or on the shelves of a grocery store. That's obviously a huge opportunity for a lot of food and other sorts of consumer products. How do you get your foot in the door in those places?
I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get your foot in the door. For us, we took our online success and brought it into stores. And so you're talking to retail buyers. They're the ones that are making decisions on what brands are brought into stores for the resets. And so, when we're talking to these retail buyers, I mean, it's night and day from what it was last year. So now they want us to bring it into the stores. They see Smackin as a number 3 brand.
What made that difference that they are now more interested?
We're just bigger and better. Like, we're all over the place at this point. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Like, if you look at us from just like a purely numbers standpoint, pretty much like Brian said, the 3rd biggest brand in America. So, and we did that all through direct to consumer.
Yeah.
So like that is like proof in itself, where like they're confident that like you're selling online, you have repeat customers, people who care about your brand, your product. Like, that's what I would recommend to someone who's looking to get into retail is don't start with retail, quite frankly.
Yeah. What about for young founders in general? What are some pieces of advice that you have to, try and get your product to be something like a number 3 brand in the country, in the world? What are some of those pieces of advice that you have for startups right now?
I mean, believe in yourself, create a vision, have a mission of like what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to do, differentiate yourself, and like stick to what's working, like test a bunch of different things and really believe in yourself. And like also like understand when maybe you're not onto the right thing and be willing to pivot and move on to what's next.
Have there been any major pivots that you guys have had to make?
Quite a few, quite a few. I mean, we launched in COVID, and so we were looking at retailers launching in retail, but the COVID happened, and a lot of retailers pulled out, and that was a big pivot where we had to shift focus to online and finding some traction there. And then manufacturing, I mean, that's just been a hurdle in itself. So, I mean, we used to use a co-packer, we had to pivot from there, and now we're vertically integrated. So there's been a lot of failures along the way.
What does the kind of supply chain look like now that you are vertically integrated? What have you guys decided on as the most efficient way to be creating these products? What does that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we have a various list of suppliers for each of our different raw goods, just kind of always tapping into the different ones. And we manufacture it at our factory, fulfill it there, and ship it out to our various customers across the country.
What's a day-to-day in your guys' life look like? Are you at the factory? Are you creating social media content? What's it like for you guys?
It's different every day. We just brought all our employees into the office. We got a great headquarters here in Minneapolis. So day to day, you'll find Cole and I there. What we're working on, I mean, just changes, depending on what the focus is that month and what we got going on.
Basically, just firefighting all day.
Yeah.
So,
what do you see as the biggest challenges that you guys have had to overcome?
I mean, one is we bootstrap this business. So I mean, most CPG, you have to spend a lot of money to get to certain places. We kept it really lean. I mean, we took risks, but they were calculated risks, and we made sure never to bet the farm. We looked at each incremental step to get there. So I think that's definitely number one.
What about the biggest opportunities that you guys see?
Retail at this point. Like Brian said earlier, 80% of the market's in retail, and like we're like 95% direct to consumer at this point. So like that's a huge opportunity for us. And past that, we see Smackin as a much bigger company than just sunflower seeds. Eventually we want to expand our portfolio to other products, other brands. So just a lot of, forward progress hopefully from here, but this is just the start.
What do you guys see in terms of like the future of the food space, of the snack space? What are some predictions that you guys have within the next couple of years?
Right. You'll definitely see more CPG companies focusing on the online play. Social media is huge. You're seeing that with Feastables, Joyride. A lot of other brands are having success. Prime, exactly. So I think that's definitely a trend that you'll keep seeing. Certainly the better for you, is something that will keep going on. That's not how we see our brand, but that's definitely a trend that will keep going.
And then what about for your brand specifically? Like, what are you tapping into to make sure that you have longevity in this space?
I mean, just product is king at the end of the day if you're like focused on longevity. So we're always making sure that we have the best product possible. And then at the end of the day, we just want to stay at the top of our customers' minds. So we do that through like our marketing efforts. And so, if they're done with a bag and maybe they haven't bought it for a month, they'll come across a video online and be like, oh yeah, I need to restock on Smackin.
How are you focused on retention right now? Like you said, bringing people back after a couple of months. What does that kind of process look like from your end to ensure that people are not just buying once, but repeat buyers?
I mean, we hit them from all angles, We've got the social media on lockdown. We have email, SMS marketing. And like I said earlier, like we do a lot of these limited edition flavor drops, which just keeps people really excited, wanting to try what's new. So I think that's a really big unlock in food is if you can do basically like limited runs of specific flavors that people just want to try that's new, brings them back, they'll restock on like your normal flavors and try the new stuff. So that's been pretty big for us as well, I'd say.
Yeah. What impact are you guys hoping to make with this company?
Well, we want to be the PepsiCo of Gen Z. So, our mission is to create memorable experiences, do that through the videos and content that we create, and also through the products that people can consume and share with their friends and family. So we just want to leave a large impact on our generation through food.
How do you think Gen Z's shopping habits, Gen Z values, the things that Gen Z is interested in, how is that impacting how you run the company day to day?
I mean, Gen Zs are certainly focused on social media. Most will purchase a new product once they see it on social media. So that's a huge play. I mean, Gen Z also is healthier, so they're more health conscious, and so we've definitely brought that into our products.
They also appreciate like authenticity.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these legacy companies that exist in all industries, not just food, but it's very like corporatized. It's not very authentic. Like they don't feel like there's like someone they can connect with.
Right.
And that's something that we really pride ourselves in, is that we're like authentic. We like show who's within the organization, who's like making the food. So I think that's something that people really appreciate in our generation as well.
Being Gen Z founders yourself, being in this under 30 cohort, obviously being a young founder is a challenge in and of itself, but there are tons of opportunities, I think, too, as being like a new face in these industries. Where do you see your position as founders, knowing that you're kind of in this, under 30 and young crowd? How do you, stand up against these larger conglomerates or these legacy companies?
I mean, these legacy companies are taking notes from startups like us. So I mean, it's really just focusing on staying true to ourselves, and over time, you become big. Being focused on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. It was great to hear more about Smackin and all that you guys are building.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex.